Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to look at Oscar Peterson's Hymn to Freedom, which featured first on his 1963 record, Night Train. As the name suggests, Hymn to Freedom is heavily rooted in church music, and it was Oscar Peterson's nod to the civil rights movement. In this video, we're going to break down the harmony, melody, and structure of Hymn to Freedom, hopefully making it easier to learn and remember. We'll start with the harmony in its most simple form, before looking at some of Oscar's specific voicings and harmonisations later in the video. Do like and subscribe, and for a PDF handout that includes all the analysis, lead sheet and sheet music of our arrangement, visit our website linked in the description below. Right, let's get started. So first off, let's look at the key bits of information. Hymn to Freedom is in B-flat major, and in 4/4 time. The form is 32 bars, divided into an A-A-B-A structure, where each section lasts for 8 bars. First, there's the A section, which is then repeated. This is followed by the B section, before ending with a final A section. Cool! So that's the key bits of information. Now let's dive in and take a look at the harmony in the A section. The harmony in Hymn to Freedom is in the style of a church hymn, rather than a jazz standard. This means most of the chords are regular triads, with only a few specific seventh chords. The A section begins on chord 1. As Hymn to Freedom is in B-flat major, this is B-flat major. Then there's a 5/1 cadence to chord 6, the relative minor, G minor. In jazz, we'd expect the 5 chord in a 5/1 cadence to be a dominant 7 chord, but here it's just a major triad. As G minor is the target point of this 5/1 cadence, D major is the 5 chord that takes us there. Next, there's a 5/1 cadence to chord 4 E-flat major. As E-flat major is the 1 chord and target point of the cadence, this means B-flat major is the 5 chord that takes us there. At this point, the harmony has hit all the main landing points in the key. Chord 1, chord 4, and the relative minor, chord 6. So far, Oscar has used 5/1 perfect cadences to set up each of these chords, and next he uses a different type of cadence to break up the A section. Currently, we're on chord 4 E-flat major, and the harmony now moves to chord 1 B-flat major. This movement from chord 4 to chord 1 is a plagal cadence. However, Oscar adds a few tweaks to the cadence to disguise it. Tweak number 1 is the resolution. Rather than resolving straight to chord 1 B-flat major, he delays this resolution and lands firstly on B-flat major over its 5th F, which then resolves to regular B-flat major on beat 3. And tweak number 2 is the addition of a passing diminished chord. The bass currently rises a tone, from the root of the E-flat major chord to the F in the B-flat over F chord. So in here, Oscar adds a passing diminished chord, E diminished 7th. E-flat major rises a semitone to E diminished, and then the bass note rises a semitone to B-flat over F, before resolving to B-flat major. So that's the first 4 bars. Now let's recap it, but with the piano. So, Hymn to Freedom begins on chord 1, B-flat major. Then there's a 5/1 cadence to the relative minor, chord 6, G minor, and D major is the 5 chord that takes us there. Then there's another 5/1 cadence, this time to chord 4 E-flat major, and this time B-flat major is the 5 chord that takes us there. So far, Oscar has only used perfect cadences, and now he breaks this up by using a plagal cadence. The overall cadence is from chord 4 E-flat major, to chord 1 B-flat major, but this is tweaked slightly. chord 4, E flat major, rises a semitone to E diminished 7, and then the bass note rises another semitone to F in a B flat over F chord, which then resolves to a regular chord 1, B flat major. Cool! And now let's finish off the A section. Up next is a development of the plagal cadence in bars 3 and 4. It begins the same way. Chord 4, E flat major, rises a semitone to the passing E diminished chord, which rises another semitone to the B flat over F chord. Then, rather than resolving to a root position chord 1, the harmony instead resolves to the relative minor, G minor, and gets there through a quick 5-1 cadence. As G minor is the 1 chord and target point, this means D major is the 5 chord that takes us there. We're now 2 bars from the end of the A section and need to resolve back to chord 1, ready for the second A section. Up to this point, the harmony has been moving every 2 beats, and Oscar now reduces the harmonic speed to 1 chord a bar, and uses a 2-5-1 cadence to resolve back to chord 1. The B flat major chord in bar 1 of the second A section is the target point, which means we'd expect the 2 chord to be C minor 7 and the 5 chord to be F7. However, Oscar tweaks the 2 chord to a secondary dominant, changing C minor 7 to C7, which creates a string of 5-1 cadences. C7 resolves to F7, which then resolves to chord 1, B flat major. So that's the A section harmony. Now let's hear it on the piano. Great! I mentioned earlier that the majority of chords in Hymn to Freedom are triads, with only a few specific 7th chords. The 7th chords we currently have are the E diminished 7th in bars 3 and 5, and the dominant 7ths in bars 7 and 8. The only other time Oscar uses a dominant 7 is when distinguishing the function of chord 1. When chord 1 is acting as chord 1, it remains a major triad, like in bar 1. However, when it's acting as a 5 chord in a 5-1 cadence, Oscar tweaks it to a dominant 7. This is the case in bar 2, where the B flat chord is acting as a 5 chord, taking us to chord 4 E flat major, so this becomes B flat 7, and also in bar 4, where again the B flat chord is acting as a 5 chord, taking us to chord 4 E flat major, so again it becomes B flat 7. And now let's hear the A section with these added dominant chords. So that's the A section harmony. Now let's take a look at the melody. The A section melody is made up of 4 phrases and uses only the notes of the home key major scale, B flat major. In true hymn style, the melody is simple and diatonic, allowing the harmony underneath to do the talking. Phrase 1 starts on the 3rd D and then walks down through the major scale from the 3rd D to the root B flat. Then, phrase 2 begins by jumping an octave on the root B flat, before again walking down through the major scale, this time from the root B flat to the 5th F. Phrase 3 mirrors the harmony and is a development of phrase 2. It begins the same way, by jumping an octave on the root B flat, before walking down through the scale, from the root B flat to the 5th F. The phrase is then developed and ends by falling through the tonic triad, from the 5th F to the 3rd D to the root B flat. Phrase 4 is simple and again mirrors the harmony. The harmonic speed here shifts to 1 chord a bar, and the melody simply outlines the root notes, falling from a C to an F. Up next is a repeat of the A section, and this is set up by a triplet pickup in the last beat of the bar, on the 5th F. So that's the melody. Now let's hear it in time on the piano. Nice! So that's the A section. Before we move on to the B section, we first need to add a second time ending for the A section. The current ending is the first time ending, as it resolves to chord 1 B flat major in the first bar of the second A section. However, in the second time ending, it needs to resolve to chord 1 earlier, as it's moving on to the B section. Let's start with the harmony. Rather than landing on chord 2 as a dominant 7 chord, C7, the harmony in the second time ending lands on chord 2 as we'd normally expect, C minor. Then it walks up through the chords of the key, from chord 2 to chord 5. Chord 3 is D minor, chord 4 is E flat major, and chord 5 is F major. Then, from chord 5, the harmony resolves to chord 1, B flat major. Cool! And now for the melody. The melody starts by falling from the 4th E flat to the 3rd D, before then landing on the root B flat. The phrase then ends by alternating the root B flat and 2nd C. Now let's hear the second time ending on the piano. So that's the A section's done. Next up is the B section. In a jazz standard, we'd expect the B section melody and harmony to contrast the A section. However, Hymn to Freedom is a little different. The B section begins with 2 bars of new melody and harmony, before then paraphrasing the earlier A section. Let's start with the harmony and I'll show you what I mean. So the harmony begins with 2 bars of chord 5 F major. Up until this point, we've only heard chord 5 in passing, in both the first and second time endings of the A section. So by resting here for 2 bars, the B section immediately feels like a new section, reinforcing the form. But the new harmony stops here, as next it paraphrases the earlier A section. It falls to chord 1, B flat major, and then there's a 5-1 cadence to chord 6, the relative minor, D major to G minor. This is then followed by another 5-1 cadence, this time to chord 4, B flat 7 to E flat major. Oscar then skips to the second variation of the plagal cadence. The harmony rises from chord 4 E flat major to the passing E diminished chord, which takes us to chord 1 over its 5th, B flat over F. And then rather than resolving to a regular chord 1, there's a quick 5-1 cadence to the relative minor, D major to G minor. Cool! And we're now 2 bars from the end of the B section, and Oscar uses the same 2-5-1 from the first A section to resolve to chord 1 in the first bar of the final A section, Again, C minor 7 is tweaked to a secondary dominant, C7, which resolves to F7, which resolves to chord 1, B flat major. So that's the B section harmony. 2 bars of chord 5, before then paraphrasing the harmony of the A section. Now let's hear it on the piano. Cool! And now for the melody, which is made up of 5 phrases. Phrase 1 begins in the second time ending of the A section, and it's easier to think of this initial phrase in relation to chord 5 F major. It starts by jumping an octave on the 5th C, before then alternating this with the 6th D. Then, phrase 2 is a direct repeat of phrase 1. It jumps an octave on the 5th C, before alternating this with the 6th D. The melody then reflects the harmony, and the remaining 3 phrases of the B section are identical to those heard earlier in the A section. These phrases are easier to think about in relation to the home key B flat major. Phrase 3 begins with a quaver triplet pickup on the 5th F, before jumping up to the 3rd D. Then it walks down through the home key major scale from the 3rd D to the root B flat. Phrase 4 then jumps an octave on the root B flat, before walking down through the major scale from the root B flat to the 5th F. Then, just like in the second variation of the plagal cadence in the A section, the melody falls down through the tonic triad from the 5th F to the 3rd D to the root B flat. And then the final phrase outlines the root notes of the dominant chords, falling from a C to an F. Whilst we're here, we should also add the triplet pickup to the last A section, which is again on the 5th F. Nice! So that's the B section melody. Now let's hear it in time on the piano. And then the form is completed by a direct repeat of the A section. As this is the final A section, the ending is the same as the second A section, which resolves to chord 1 in the last bar. So that's the melody and foundation harmony of Hymn to Freedom. Now, we're going to look at a few of Oscar Peterson and Ray Brown's harmonic tweaks. First, there's a melody harmonisation. Second, there's some gospel-inspired Oscar voicings. And third, we'll look at 3 different ways Oscar and Ray Brown alter the bass movement in the A section. First up is the melody harmonisation, which happens in the first 2 phrases of the B section. The B section begins with 2 bars of chord 5 F major, and against this Oscar harmonises the melody. The melody note C is the 5th of the F major chord, and when the melody rises a tone to D, Oscar mirrors this, changing the chord underneath to G minor, before falling back to F major when the melody note falls back to the 5th C. F major and G minor are chords 1 and 2 in F major, and rocking between them whilst the root note F stays the same gives the phrase some tension and release. Here's how it sounds in time on the piano. Great! And now let's look at a couple of Oscar's voicings. Voicing 1 is in the first time ending of the A section. On the C7 chord, Oscar puts the root note C at the top and bottom of the voicing, whilst the third and fifth, E and G, are on the inside, doing all the work. The fifth G is in the left hand thumb, and the third E is in the right hand thumb. Whilst the root note remains on the outside, these two inner parts walk up through the chord, from the fifth and third, to the sixth and fourth, to the seventh and fifth, before walking back down. This exact same voicing is then applied to the F7 chord in the next bar. The root note F is on the top and bottom of the voicing, whilst the left hand thumb has the fifth C, and the right hand thumb has the third A. Then, the inner parts walk up through the chord, from the fifth and third, to the sixth and fourth, to the seventh and fifth. This is a great gospel voicing, straight from the church music that inspired Hymn to Freedom. Now let's hear these two bars together. Cool! And there's one more Oscar voicing to look at, in the second time ending of the A section. Rather than resolving straight to chord 1, B flat major, Oscar outlines a mini plagal cadence. The bass lands immediately on the root note of chord 1, B flat, but the inner harmony instead lands on chord 4, E flat major, before resolving to chord 1, B flat major on beat 3. Again, all the movement is in the inner parts. The root note B flat stays on the top and bottom for the whole voicing. In terms of chord 4, E flat major, this is the fifth, and the left hand thumb has the third G, and the right hand thumb has the root E flat. These inner parts then fall to the second and seventh, and then to the root and sixth, before rising back to the second and seventh, which are the fifth and third of the one chord B flat major. Cool! And to finish off, let's look at 3 ways Oscar and Ray Brown alter the bass movement in the A section. Substitutions and reharmonizations are common in jazz standards, and their hymn equivalent is inversions, which can be altered to create more interesting bass movement. First up is bars 5 and 6 of the A section. Currently, this moves from chord 4 E flat major to the passing E diminished chord to B flat over F. The bass line is ascending chromatically at this point, and if we tweak the next chord, D major, to D major over its third F sharp, the bass can continue rising chromatically, to the D over F sharp chord, and then to the G minor chord. Here's how this one sounds in time. And the second place we can change the inversions is in bars 1 and 2. Here we can tweak the 5 chords in both 5-1 cadences to give the bass line a chromatic approach to both 1 chords. We start on B flat major and then tweak the D major chord to D major over its third F sharp, which then rises a semitone to G minor. Next, we tweak the B flat 7 chord to B flat 7 over its third, which then rises a semitone to E flat major. Cool! And let's hear how this one sounds in time on the piano. Nice! And now for the third inversion, and this one is my favourite, outlined by Ray Brown. This one also happens in the first 2 bars, and it's all about a descending bass movement. We start on chord 1, B flat major, and then the bass falls a semitone to D over its fifth A. Next, the bass falls a tone, taking us to G minor. Then, rather than setting up chord 4 with just a 5-1 cadence, Ray Brown drops in a 2-5-1. So F minor to B flat 7 to E flat major. Then he joins the G minor chord to the F minor chord by falling chromatically to F sharp minor. So the progression is now B flat major to D over A to G minor, then G minor falls a semitone to F sharp minor, which falls another semitone to F minor, the 2 chord in a 2-5-1, where B flat 7 is the 5 chord and E flat major is the 1 chord. As the harmony is so similar throughout Hymn to Freedom, you can experiment with different inversions all over the place. These are just 3 of my favourites from the record. So that's the whole tune, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do like and subscribe, and for a PDF handout that includes all the analysis, lead sheet and piano sheet music of our arrangement, check out our website linked in the description below. Happy practicing!